Okay, so I have 11:05 on my watch, so in keeping with Tumi's request to keep on time, I'm going to get going. So good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our session today titled Biocatalysis for Bio-Based Products in an African Context. This session we aim to explore the role of biocatalysis in the production of bio-based products, their relevance in the African context, and the opportunities and challenges associated with implementing these technologies. One of the initiatives to stimulate this area of innovation in the last 2 years have been the Industrial Biocatalysis Hub, and today we have brought together participants and partners in that hub to showcase what we have done in biocatalysis in South Africa in the last year or so. We welcome Dr. Lucia Steenkamp, Director of the IBH and Principal Researcher at the CSR as part of our panel today, Dr. Gerard Niemand, the Executive Chair of PURIS Natural Aroma Chemicals, and Professor Dean Brady, who heads up biocatalysis at the University of the Witwatersrand, and who is also a node of the Industrial Biocatalysis Hub. I'm Laura Kotze-Jacobs. I'm the Program Manager at the CSR heading up the Industrial Biocatalysis Hub, and I'm going to facilitate the session for us this morning. So Dr. Steenkamp will start off the conversation this morning. Thanks, Lucia.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to just do some quick introductions about biocatalysis and just give you a few examples of what we actually do at the CSIR in terms of this Industrial Biocatalysis Hub. Oops. It doesn't go down. Okay. So basically, for those who don't know, biocatalysis is basically where we use enzymes or microorganisms containing specific enzyme systems to then catalyze processes. And if we just look quickly at what's the advantages of biocatalysis versus that of classical catalysis, that we use much milder conditions. I mean, we normally work between 25 and 37 degrees. We can do it in an aqueous environment, and where it's necessary, we can actually still use organic solvents to help with the dissolution of the compounds. The enzymes and the microorganisms are biodegradable. We don't use any hazardous materials. And for this reason, the technologies are normally green and very environmentally friendly. And the whole industry seems to go towards greener processes. And we find that we do not use any high pressures, any high temperatures, therefore not very high energy inputs. In some cases, for those who are chemists, will know that sometimes you have to do a reaction at 0 degrees to if it's too volatile. We don't need any of those, and the waste streams are also very much environmentally friendly. So when you look at biocatalysis, it's probably the most or the best technology when it comes to the 12 principles of green chemistry. So these days, people really are demanding green technologies and green products and lower carbon footprints for the different processes. So anything where you actually ingest it or you put it on your skin, people are really trying to see if the products can be greener and the technologies to get there also greener. So we can definitely look at the flavors and fragrances here, pharmaceuticals, veterinary. Then also you find that you can often extract these things from nature, but in very, very low yields, and then it does not become viable. But with biocatalysis and biotechnology, we can often replace these harsh chemical methods and also get increased yields compared to extracting it. And but we also realize that we always need some green chemistry, especially when we do the downstream process, or sometimes to make the precursors. For you, those of you that don't know the 12 principles of green chemistry, in the 1990s, they came up with these 12 principles. And biocatalysis is basically the ultimate technology, because 10 to 12 principles definitely are coming from biocatalysis. So you want to prevent waste. You don't want to use hazardous materials. You want to minimize solvents. You want to make it as efficient in energy as possible. You want to use renewables feedstocks. You want to do real-time analysis. You don't want derivatives and unwanted products, and Biocatalysis basically speaks to all of these. So like Lara said, we were fortunate to host the Industrial Biocatalysis Hub at the CSIR. So it's an initiative from TIA, Technology Innovation Agency, and DSI. And okay. So yeah, we were chosen to then host this, and we came up with a node model, or hub and node model. So we've got some industry partners, and Dr. Gerrit will talk about that just now. And we also have nodes at 5 universities. So the idea is to really start building up the skills and experience in South Africa, and then hopefully be able to go into Africa with these skilled people, because yeah, it's something really niche still in South Africa, and there's very little skills, and it's very, very important to build the bioeconomy using biocatalysis. So the intended impact of this industrial biocatalysis is that at the universities, but also at the CSIR, we start with proof of concepts, and then we start optimizing the technologies. This can then be scaled up to larger scale. And at the CSIR, we also have the facilities, like you heard yesterday, up to 1,000 liters. And then at that stage, normally the industry partner has the confidence that they can scale this up and do it on commercial scale. So we have different offerings at the Biocatalysis Hub. We help with some policy development, especially now in this new area. We do a lot of networking. We give people access to funding. We give them access to manufacturing. We have a huge component of human capital development. We take on at least 4 interns per year and 1 postdoc to get more skills development. And a big thing is the industry support. So we have this model where the industry partners can do an expression of interest, and if then chosen, we do the technology development or scale up or whatever is required, and then we license the technologies so that they can be commercialized. Just some of the examples that I will show you. We must just take into account that when we talk about biomass, sometimes people think it's just wood and straw and stuff like that, but biomass is basically anything that's a renewable organic material, and that it's coming from a living organism. So for this reason, even things like agricultural products and byproducts, and also even bones and shells and stuff like that, also resort under biomass. So I'm just going to quickly look at ferulic acid, which is from a brand biomass, Ambrafuran, which is from scleral, from the scleral sage plant, biocides, which we made from citrus, allicin from the aloeferix plant, nutabuck from citrus peel waste, and then also just an example of how biocatalysis is actually fantastic in the circular economy. So we did this natural extraction of ferulic acid. Now, ferulic acid is abundant in your woods and grasses and corn knolls and brands and so on. But it's very difficult to get it out of there because it's covalently linked to your carbohydrates. And what they normally do commercially is to add some sodium hydroxide, but it destroys everything. So you do get the ferulic acid out of there, but it's quite difficult to work in the industry, from foods, cosmetics, to get it out of the different sources of woods and grass and so on. But they use between 4 and 6 different enzymes. First they have to break down the carbohydrates and then the protein and so on. And we actually found a single enzyme used in the baking industry. So it's very, very cheap, and it can actually release the ferulic acid and keep the bran intact. So then after you've basically isolated the ferulic acid, you can still use the bran for a feed for cattle, by just doing a single recrystallization after binding it to a resin. We got more than 95% purity. At the moment, we found that there's not enough bran in South Africa, but I just read this weekend that there's 300 million tons of straw in Africa. And it's basically used for burning and then providing energy. But I think, if we start doing pooling these resources, we can definitely make this a valuable technology. One of our very interesting technologies is Ambrafuran. So initially they got this from the sperm whales swimming around in the sea, and they're excreting these huge pieces of ambra, and then with time it basically oxidizes, and then they can isolate this ambrox from there. I don't know who decided to look in poop for a very good fixative for perfumes, but that's what happened. So the people started hunting these poor sperm whales and killing them to get the ambra before they excrete it, and there was a whole treaty on that they can't do this anymore. And then they came up with an 8-step chemical synthesis process. Some of these steps are very, very harsh. And then we found a microorganism that can eliminate 7 of these 8 steps in chemistry. And then we also came up with this final dehydration step, which we then patented. The bioconversion we reduced from 7 to 10 days to only 4 days. And it starts from sclareol, which is a clarisage plant, so you can actually do job creation by doing this process. We got the final product in single crystallization, more than 99.7% purity, and there's an international company interested in this technology. So this is basically the 7 steps that we eliminated with the microorganism. It's very small there, but for instance, the first step is epoxidation, which normally takes 8 days, and then it just carries on from there. So we've basically come up with a 2-step technology, where the chemical process, if you want to make 1 kilo of the product, you produce 207 kilos of waste. With the CSIR process, we only do 40 kilograms of broth waste, which can be autoclaved and then disposed of. So there's no other wastes in the whole process. So we do the reaction at 25 degrees to get the final, or the intermediate, and then we just do the final step at 60 degrees with some zeolites. And while the chemical process is really very long, we don't have any waste streams. And if you can imagine, if you do this chemical process on large scale, the bigger the scale, the more problematic and dangerous it can become. And with this natural biocatalysis, it's a very, very efficient process. One of the other products we did was biocide for biodex. So we used a natural citrus extract, and we combined it with a chemical stabilizer. And it's really fantastic because some enzyme in the extract basically reacts with the chemical stabilizer, and you get increased or superior antimicrobial activity. So these products were registered in the EU as the only type 2 and 4 products for biocides, and it's from Africa. Okay. So then basically allosin, we got that from aloe vera, aloe ferox. Aloe ferox is definitely superior to aloe vera because it's got 20 times more bitters, and it's used for skin lightening. And we also got this basically from a precursor in the aloe ferox. Unfortunately, what we do in South Africa is we get the sap, we take the water off, and then we export it, and then they process it, and we have to import it at very high prices. Then one of our very, very new projects that we've just concluded was for AP Bio, and they came to us, they wanted this technology where they use this essential citrus oil, and they wanted us to make with the use of an enzyme, make a better product. So we add some enzymes to this citrus oil, and it makes some new compounds. And this new compounds then gives you an insect repellent, or insect, and as well as the insecticidal qualities. If you want to make, for instance, this one compound, nutcatone, you would need 400,000 grapefruit to make 1 kilo of this, but we can actually do it with an enzyme from the citrus oil. And the company is already doing exports to Africa, China, and Australia, so this is really a good success for us. And by the way, this is what it looks like. One of the formulators has put it in like this, so please come to the stand there, Tia, and we will give you one of these bug away products, and you can see when the malaria season starts or the mosquito season starts that it's really excellent. Thank you. Okay, so I want to do the circular economy, but I will leave that maybe for one of the questions.
Up next to give us your industry perspective.
Good morning, folks. Thanks for coming. It's nice to have such a big crowd. We appreciate your presence. And actually, everything that Lucia mentioned, I was going to say as well. So now I better say something more than what she did. But what I intend doing is telling you what happens if you let loose biocatalysis in industry. Very briefly, our company is basically, we started off as a company with just essential oils as our focus. We pretty soon discovered there's some valuable components in the essential oils that we take out with mild separation technologies. And then we said, so what next? And then we heard about, that's about 15 years ago, we heard about biocatalysis. In the flavor and fragrance industry, and so let me tell you what we did with biocatalysis. We see it as an enabling technology for the manufacturing of high-value flavor and fragrance products. But why biocatalysis? Well, does it make sense to extract natural aroma chemicals from botanicals only if it can be produced more efficiently and sustainably through biocatalysis? You mentioned how many million fruits of citrus to make 1 kilo of nutketone. So the bioconversions are carried out with microbes and pure enzymes. Lucia said a lot about that as well. The sweet spot for what we as a company use to take a decision on whether we're going to try a mild separation route or another green chemistry route, or are we going to do biocatalysis? And that is that the current aroma chemicals from plants that are seasonal and where there might be geopolitical and other constraints that impact supply chains has become a major decision point for us. How many of you remember the Arabic Spring in 2010? What happened was all the countries in the Mediterranean stopped producing all the herbs and the spices that area is known for. And pretty soon, the flavor and fragrance industry was in deep trouble. And at that time, there was a conference launched presented in London, and the outcome of that was that biotechnology should come to the rescue. So it is guesstimated that within 10 years, 30% of flavor and fragrance ingredients could be supplied from the biotech industry. Now that's a massive amount. And it will be labeled as natural if produced by the EU Book of Rules. Now, I don't want to belabor you with all the regulations and all the other important aspects about using biocatalysis, but the more complex and the further we progress with aroma ingredients using biocatalysis, the more complex it gets, because the concern of the regulatory authorities are always what happens to the other little small components that you also form in your mixture. Let me say something about PURIS CSIR and the Industrial Biocatalysis Hub. We use this biotech enabling technology, and we decided as a business that is where our future is. That's where we grow, and that's where we're going to grow. There are many other smaller companies and companies our size that just continue dealing with botanicals. They grow plants and they grow herbs and spices, and they harvest that and they sell that. That's not our business, and we said that from the beginning. So we said, so what are we going to do? And we decided that biotechnology will be our enabling, our agent to help us to get there. The CSIR supported us in this over the past 5 years, and currently we have the following project portfolio. There's collaboration between PURIS and CSIR. I had to make a list here because of, just to give you an impression of what we have achieved over the past 5 years. Esters, we managed to produce with enzymatically to produce some interesting esters, which is commercialized. So I'm not talking only about academic stuff here, it's actually commercialized. Beta-damascenone. Are there any flavor or fragrance people here this morning? If I mention that word, people jump up with excitement, or they go paralytic, or they really fall. It's the magic ingredient for perfumes, beta-damascenone. So the current way of producing it is to use a side stream that comes from sugar fermentation. It's called fusel oil, and in the fusel oil there are minimal quantities of beta-damascenone. But that's the way it's extracted at the moment. You increase the presence of beta-damascenone from 0.5% to 99% purity. Now, anybody who's involved with chemistry would know what that means. The CSIR is currently looking with Lucia's team at an enzymatic pathway to produce that. So obviously, that's something that we're very excited about. And then there's another one that's excited for fragrance compounders, and it's orris. Orris comes from iris flowers. It comes from the Middle Ages when the monks stored the roots in stores under cold conditions, and then after 3 years, it's got this magnificent aroma. So we're looking at an enzymatic path to accelerate that. So that is what we are involved with the CSIR. But we've asked them also at one stage, you'll see one of our products called is caramel furanone, to help us optimize the process, which they did. PURIS has also its own in-house projects. And I'm just going to mention the names in case it means anything to you. So this is work we do at our company in Paarl, in the Western Cape, independent from what projects we're also doing with CSIR. 2-phenyl ethyl alcohol. That's an interesting one. It's got a flowery, very gentle flavor aroma, but it's also a very good antibiotic. And it's used how many of you use flow mist? It's something that if you have sinus, you use flow mist. There's 2-PE in it. Okay. So that's an interesting one. Indole-3 acetic acid is actually a plant hormone, and we just stumbled upon it whilst we were busy formulating a product further down the biocatalysis chain, where there was going to be another bioconversion done. Scatol. Scatol is actually vomit. And all my staff are in resentment with this project. But scatol is an ingredient that perfumers love because it has this animalistic note to it. And I'm not a perfumer, and I'm not a flavorist either. I'm a microbiologist, and I try and understand what's happening in this world of ours. But scatol is a project that scatol has always been manufactured synthetically by chemistry, just with old-fashioned chemistry. Scatol is now manufactured with a 3-step, 3-microorganism process with 3 bioconversions. and we hope to have some small samples available by the end of this financial year, this calendar year, which is around the corner. And then 2-phenyl ethyl octanoate. That's an interesting one because it is a fragrance ingredient, but it's actually a fixative. If you put perfume on your skin and after 3 minutes there's nothing left, it's not a good idea. So the industry and the fragrance and the perfumers are always looking for fixatives, and this is an interesting one. We produce that with a one-step bioconversion. Okay, so that is what we're doing with the CSIR. How many? 1 minute left. Okay. Challenges. As a small company, we financed our own involvement with biocatalysis. We tried some other institutions in South Africa, which I won't mention, and they said, no, you're strong enough, you can fund your own growth and you can fund all your stuff. You can't. If you want to get into biocatalysis, you need money. I can tell you now, Amyris is the world's biggest bioprocess company for food ingredients and many other fragrance products. They've just filed for bankruptcy in America. Now, if they can't do it, it makes everybody, there's a major shock. But you need cash, you really need money. You need skilled and experienced scientists, technologists, and bioengineers. What we had to do is we had to take people on board just out of university or with some experience and then train them ourselves. Because it's nice to have biochemistry. It's great to have biochemistry, but it's not biotechnology and it's not commercial stuff. Then operational costs. That is, as I've just said, money. Okay, one last thing about regulatory. As the market develops, the regulatory requirements becomes more and more stringent. And if you talk about GMO'S, to use a GMO to do a bioconversion, it's called the qualified presumption of safety. It covers safety concerns for humans, animals, and the environment. And the European Food Safety Authority requires a dossier to be compiled, and it can take you 3 years. So you may have your whole process beautifully sorted out. You may be able to produce some GMO that has a wonderful ability to do a bioconversion, but if your dossier isn't in order, you're not going to be allowed to produce it. Okay. So lastly, going to market, successful downstream processing is perhaps the biggest hurdle. If you have a wonderful soup with fantastic bioconversions in it, and you can't separate it, and you can't downstream purify it, you have a problem. Commercialization of all single molecules are challenging. It's very difficult to sell a new molecule. Ask us. We've had a few hurdles along the way. It's not easy because people need to understand what are the risks, what are the safety measures, and often they don't want to include it in an existing formulation that they have. They would want to use it in a new product, a new formulation, which makes it complex. So a good way to go about it is find a client that's willing to take this route to market with you, so you're not trying to invent the wheel yourself. Sense of urgency, folks. If you want to be in biocatalysis, what I say to my staff, somebody overtook us last night whilst we were sleeping. The northern hemisphere, the other side of the world, the other part of the globe, somebody is working on this. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of involvement in biocatalysis. But somebody, if you don't pull up your socks and if you don't do your best and have investment in some of the other things that I've mentioned, it's going to be tough. Avoid Me Too. Other people has been there before. Don't go there. Preferentially use wild-type microorganisms. that are listed on the EFSA, the QPS list that I've just mentioned, because then you don't have to compile these dossiers. And with botanical feedstock, if you have to use botanicals as a starting material, please select fast growers that grows easily and under the ideal agricultural conditions in the area where you live. Formulate meaningful state support policy. Oh, please, man. You know, we have projects, and I know we have grants, and I know we have those things. You don't need it for a year or two. You need it for 5 years. The products that we have in the market took us at least 5 years from the first idea we had to commercialization. And it could even, if we had to compile a dossier on one of the projects I didn't mention here, it's going to be 7 years. So, but I don't want to discourage you, but just get lots of money before you start. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerard, for that industry perspective.
I'll talk over time, it's no problem. Okay, I just press this. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm just going to take you through a few other aspects of biocatalysis. I'd like to thank the CSIR, particularly Dr. Lara Cozier-Jacobs and Dr. Steenkamp, who have driven the progress of the Industrial Biocatalysis Hub. Apart from the CSR, at the moment it also includes Wits University, which I'm from, Rhodes University, which is focusing on the biorefinery type enzymes, University of Free State, which is working on structural work to do with oxidative enzymes, University of the Western Cape, which is metagenomics primarily, University of Fort Hare, bioprospecting for enzymes. So there's a team there. We're all trying to bring something together in this. I'd also like to thank the Department of Science and Innovation and also TIA for supporting all of this work. What does WITS do as part of this? I haven't mentioned that. You can look at this briefly, but really our aim is to integrate chemistry, organic chemistry, and biocatalysis so that the organic chemists have a whole new range of tools which they didn't have before. Biocatalysis is already, apart from PURIS, there's also it's also a major part of the economy. For instance, ACI Mining Chemicals uses biocatalysis, a 10,000 ton product to make materials for the mining industry. So biocatalysis is already out there. It's also used in a huge range of food products. Why do we use it? It's got a number of advantages, particularly in organic chemistry. First off, it's chemoselective. That means it will work on one group and not another, and which means you can bypass a lot of protection and difficult things you normally do in organic chemistry. So in this, the example I've given here is if you use acid, you hydrolyze an ester group and the nitrile group, whereas using biocatalyst, you can very specifically convert the nitrile group to an acid or an amide. It's also enantioselective. Most organic compounds, or a great percentage of them, especially in medical applications, are either left-handed or right-handed, and you need to have only the one. The one format can be extremely dangerous, while the other one's extremely beneficial, and enzymes are ideal at making that selectivity. And they can also be regioselective. You can have, which you can, again, it's almost impossible to do with normal types of catalysis, is the example I've got here, is there was two nitrile groups on the one compound. We can selectively convert the one and not the other. So this is the kind of selectivity you want. Why do we need this kind of selectivity? What's going to come out of it? Well, the population of Africa is going to carry on increasing. There's reduced child mortality, there's increased longevity. We're going to end up with a much larger population. We will need to have industrialization of Africa, and in particular reindustrialization of South Africa. That was mentioned at the previous talks, the plenary talk. And also we've got a number of areas where we're making a lot of imports, in particular things like the pharmaceutical industry, where there's a trade deficit associated with it. We need to reverse that. Okay. As Dr. Steenkamp mentioned, there's the 12 principles of green chemistry. The idea of this is it's a framework that allows us to change chemistry in a way that it makes it more sustainable, less impact on the environment, and if you have less impact on the environment, it so happens to be that it becomes a cheaper way of making something. So it's actually fundamental to the production of chemicals, because you're producing less waste. If you're producing less waste, you're not putting so much in to your product, and therefore it becomes cheaper to manufacture. So, but to do that, you need to have very specific systems. Okay, there's the 12 principles. They're diverse around waste prevention and how you make the compounds, how dangerous they are, etc. But in particular, the most important one is probably catalysis. This has an impact on all the others as well, but catalysis allows you to specifically make something to reduce the energy required in it and to make it a lot faster. And biocatalysis is an ideal way of doing that. It uses enzymes. Sorry, I've gone out of the. Let's try to get back in the current slide. Okay. It uses enzymes. It's environmentally friendly. It's sustainable. You don't need precious metals to do the catalysis for it. It's ideal to link up to biorefineries because already the enzymes are there to break down components in the biorefinery. We mentioned the selectivity, which is ideal for reducing costs. It can use water as a solvent, which a lot of other catalysts wouldn't be able to do, and it's ideal for one-pot reactions. And as I said, it has a positive impact on the other 12 principles of green chemistry. Now, this is an international trend. This is to make the HIV reverse transcriptase inhibitor. MSD is making that. It's Latravir. And it's made pretty much purely using enzymes. There are 9 enzymes involved in 2 separate reactions. So there's 2 one-pot reactions put together. And the whole structure is made from a combination of enzymes. So if we don't have biocatalysis, we're not going to be able to get into large parts of the pharmaceutical industry. It's just it's a given. So we really have to build this technology and have a wide range of people who know how to implement it and have the skills and the technical background in that. Okay. I just mentioned here that we're working at the moment. One of the areas is in addition of amine groups, and the reason for doing that is that about 90% of small drugs have got amines in them, or go from amines. So we need to be able to work with those kind of molecules. So we've been working with a company in the UK that makes enzymes prosomics, and we've set up a system where you've got a double system, which one enzyme takes from one component and adds to another. Okay. And so we're using this for looking at 4 different compounds around TB, HIV, diabetes, and blood disorders. Okay. The one compound, just to show, is we're talking about an anti-selectivity. We've managed to make the one compound 97% EE, which is almost absolutely pure for that, and we've already, without even optimizing it, got around about 73% yield, which is pretty good as well. We'll now be working with the University of Pretoria to try to advance the production and bring down the costs further using other techniques. Our aim is we've got a partner, which is Chemical Process Technologies in Pretoria, who I've built a facility purely for working onto pharmaceuticals, and through them there's a hope that some of this will become commercialized. We've also been working for a number of years over nitrile hydratases. We've been able to find organisms that do it, pull out the genes, know exactly how that is, work out what the anti-selectivity of them are, which substrates they can take, and also we're trying to work on how to expand that by doing various forms of what's known as directed evolution to change the active site at the moment. And in fact, it just happened to be that on the flight I came here on, the person who sat down next to me was one of my students who had been working on the project previously, so that was a wonderful reminder of that. There's a number of people who can do this thing across the country. Okay, we're also working with the American company Ketoreductases, who have kindly given us a set of enzymes called Ketoreductases, and we're then using that to build up another set of compounds which can be used in pharmaceuticals. So we're now able to move a whole range of atoms around different molecules and therefore give us precursors to the required pharmaceuticals. And then we also had a nice bit of serendipity. We're working with a class of enzymes called Laccases, and we were trying to work again with the CSR to make a certain compound. We didn't quite get there, but we managed to do something which was quite unusual. We managed to do some click chemistry, which is a kind of core area of chemistry at the moment, again using enzymes. So it shows that biocatalysts can do a whole range of things across the whole across a broad range of chemistries. And as mentioned, as Dr. Steenkamp mentioned, the production of the Nutabug, we were also involved in the training up of people who started off on working on the oxidative enzymes around that to produce the nucletone and the carvone. And then lastly, we're also starting to work with a company, LIGNORGANIC, which is a company that's started out trying to work out ways to add value to lignin, which is one of the major byproducts out of plant matter. And we're trying to find some innovative materials there, working with both sugars and the lignin that comes out of that material. So just to finish off, I'd just like to thank the wide range of people that we have at WITS who are involved one way or another in biocatalysis, including Professor Roger Sheldon on the top. He's one of the people who actually started out the entire concept of green chemistry and invented something called the E-factor, which is what most companies around the world now use to measure how much waste they're producing and work out ways of reducing it. So thank you very much.
So I think if one can take anything from the 3 talks we just heard is we need to work together. If it's not for Dean and the guys at the nodes that train up the scientists, expose them to the type of projects that have biocatalysis as underlying technologies, and if it's not for companies like PURIS and other companies that we work with that take up these technologies, work with us to develop it and then to implement it and be able to commercialize it, then biocatalysis won't really take off in South Africa. And the biggest successes have been where we've worked very well together to get this done. So being cognizant of the time, I was hoping we would have a lot more time to discuss and take questions from the floor. Are there maybe 1 or 2 questions we can take before we vacate for the next session? Shall we go with Kwesi and then the gentleman in front? Oh, let me give you. Okay, they've got one.
No, one is a comment, one is a question. So, but I was just wondering as I was listening, why is the fragrance industry so ubiquitous with gross things and violence? I mean, you were talking about excrements, you were talking about projectile volume, vomit, but we also know some of the ingredients from Chanel No. 5, the origins of it came from beating cats. But I think that's just the comment. But what I wanted to find out, you made a case towards the end that it's preferable that you choose not mutant, or rather wild-type organisms, and I think there's a case for that. But do you also think that maybe there's a case for maybe synthetic genomes, or at least genetic engineering of some of the wild-type genomes to maybe enhance specific pathways and so on? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of work going on with the GMOs. Most of the American and European biotech companies spend a lot of research on GMOs. There are 2 reasons why they sometimes are reluctant to get involved with that. The consumer out there still believes that there's something wrong, inherently wrong with GMOs, and they don't want to feed their little kids stuff that's going to change them into frogs or something weird's going to happen. So that's the one reason is there is still an inherent bias against GMOs. And secondly, the cost involved with building up. We worked for a while. We couldn't continue, unfortunately. It became too expensive with an institute in the US, in San Francisco. And the dossier that we would have had to compile would take between 3 and 4 years to complete because of all the toxicity testing and scrutinies and whole regimes of work that needs to be done. So that's the reason why for foodstuffs, it's always been an easier road for fragrances because at least you only put the stuff on your skin. But now that is also changing. So the same regimes and the same regulatory requirements are also becoming valid for fragrance applications, unfortunately, or fortunately. Well, all of us are consumers, me too. So it's just sometimes it becomes absurd if you see what it is that they require, but rather, I would say, safe than sorry. So I think I haven't answered your question correctly.
You digress. No, it was great. Thank you, sir.
Hi there. Thank you for the talk. So you mentioned that the world is obviously shifting towards sort of that green thinking, and obviously your work is a testament to that. Also, the world is looking to lignocellulosic biorefineries. So obviously it's very hard to use lignocellulosic waste because of its recalcitrant nature. The cellulose is there's just so much cellulose, so it's hard to convert it. So I'm thinking, with the development of your technologies, with the growth of your company, would you guys venture into lignocellulosic biorefineries? How would you tackle that? And do you think there's a market for lignocellulosic biorefineries in Africa? Because it's something that I'm interested in, something that I'm working on. Yeah.
I think that's a question for Dean, seeing as they're working with LIGNORGANIC already.
So I think that there's something like 400 biorefineries already in operation around the world. A lot of them Europe, USA, but also into China and India as well. And I think that is, obviously, if we're going to be cutting down on fossil fuels, we need to get carbon from somewhere. And the place is obviously plant matter. They are obviously making money at the moment, and they'll be even more efficient as they get bigger. A new one, I think, is going to be set up somewhere in Panama or something like that. It's going to be like 1% of the fuel output of the world. So yes, it's going to advance there. And the recalcitrance of it, which is again the point of using biocatalysis, you've either got to turn it into like biochar, or you've got to break it down and put it through into carbon monoxide, put it through a Fischer-Tropsch process, or you use enzymes. Now the enzymes can cleave it up, you just got to get the cost right and bring it down. As the technology improves, we're actually bringing down the cost of it. And in the end, I think that this is the only way to go forward. The only other option to get carbon, if we're going to cut out fossil fuels, is to extract it from the atmosphere. But that's also extraordinarily expensive because it's still very dilute. So yeah, I would say that biorefinery is the way to go. The question is how to make the most of it, and you've got to find a good source. Africa has got obviously a huge amount of biomass, especially Central Africa, where you get a high turnover, quick-growing plants, unlike the kind of pine trees, you can grow it a lot faster. So again, Africa is a perfect place to develop biorefineries.
Thank you.
So thank you very much to the panel of presenters today and to all of you guys for joining us. I think both Dean and Gerard are here for a few more hours today before they jet back to the Western Cape and Gauteng. So if you do have questions for them, please feel free to engage them afterwards. But thank you so much to the DSI and TIA for supporting the Industrial Biocatalysis Hub, and also for BioAfrica for giving us the platform to talk about biocatalysis in South Africa and Africa. Thanks, everyone.